Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Phoenix Growth Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Sravan Allopi. How you doing, man? Welcome to the show.
Good, man. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate being here.
Thanks for going on. Yeah, it's good to see you. You talk about something that you call CIA, so Conscious Integrated Awareness. What is that?
So, Conscious Integrated Awareness, or the CIA that I love to throw out in my work, is essentially a skill set, and it's a skill set which helps people build, quite literally, conscious awareness on themselves, their habits, their mindset, the way in which they either react or respond to the world, and everything in between. And then, if you imagine like a sewing needle, weaving it together. So I'll give you a classic example. I like to talk about the state of consciousness. So bringing the subconscious thoughts through to the conscious mind, i.e., let's say, for example, you say, oh, as of Monday, I'm going to start waking up at 5 a.m. and going to the gym. But you know that you have a history of sleeping only after like 2 in the morning because you're playing video games or whatever it is. So you're not going to make that 5 a.m. wake up call. And so subconsciously, you have like this little scientist in the back of your mind that's saying, okay, well, let's see, based on the data and the evidence that you've provided me, I don't think you're going to make this. And so it has a little clipboard and it starts writing things down, right? This is how we start essentially preloading ourselves to go down the path of self-sabotage. State of consciousness is about being conscious of that and moving it to the forefront of your mind so that you are aware that in an event where you are going to make a promise to yourself, because all these thoughts are very interlinked, it's going to basically trigger a point of activation, right? And so you're going to look at yourself as, effectively a liability. And we just need to be conscious of that. And then when we are conscious, we're able to become aware of how this makes us feel, right? Because if you think about it, you'll say, I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. Your alarm will probably go off. You'll hit snooze as like a knee-jerk reaction. And then you go back to bed. You wake up at, say, like 7, 8, 9, whatever, and feel really bad about yourself because now you've basically not kept to the promise that you told yourself. And then the subconscious mind notes down and puts another, tally or whatever. Okay, can't keep promises, right? So when it comes to a point where you're trying to break through and change your ways, it becomes that much harder because now you have a stack of evidence telling you, well, no, you can't. And so when we become aware of this, we become aware of the emotions that we feel, the emotions that we experience when we essentially prove ourselves right in a negative context, we can then start to intentionally uproot them and then anchor in new beliefs and essentially shift the paradigm, the mental paradigm in which we operate in. So that's what I like to call the conscious integrated awareness. It's essentially a means of reprogramming your mindset.
Okay, yeah. Right, yeah, I think I've got a few questions about that then. So, I love that phrase you talked about when you said you have this stack of evidence against yourself. And it's like the more that grows, the less you trust yourself.
Yeah.
Right. The most important relationship you have in life is with yourself. And if you have a relationship with another person, and every time you say, oh, I'm going to get up with you at 6 a.m. and go to the gym. If you have a gym buddy, and you're like, I'm going to meet you at the gym at 6. But every time you don't, your gym buddies are going to lose trust in you and then just stop going to the gym with you. They're going to I'm just out. I'm out. I'm not playing this game with you anymore. I'm not playing any game with you anymore because you don't play by the rules. You don't stick to what you say you're going to do. And that's what happens, I guess, right? You have those voices in your head like, no, you can't do that. So when you want to do something else, then you have all these voices in your head, right? And they make you feel a certain way, and you for me, I think that manifests a lot of time in apathy, like the emotion of apathy, like, oh, why do I even try? Like, after my daughter was born, I didn't go to the gym for like a good amount of time, and I was trying to put up this pull-up bar on the side of my house on the outside because it was this huge pull-up bar, and the walls of my house are like crumbling because it's a really old building. So every time I drilled into the wall to try and put it in the wall, I was just like, the wall would just fall apart. And I just tried it like 5 different times, like got too much of time. I can pull that bar up. And I went out there and did it, and it just didn't work. And I did it like 5 times, and every time I was just like, oh, why do I get bored? You know, I can't even bloody put this pull-up bar. There's no point even trying. So I guess for me, that's a personal experience of where that comes from. But so that you've become conscious of them, you're pulling them out from the subconscious when those things arrive, those kind of internal triggers happened, and then how do you integrate them?
So integration is it's a bit of a mechanical process, and the inputs in which that mechanism takes place is through breathwork. So that's what I have found has helped me, right? Using breath as the vessel to guide the mind to the current present state of self, and then use that to explore the body, to explore the areas in which we have emotional trigger points or impulses, right? Some may even say where traumas lie, right? These are all linked to our belief systems. And then we use various breathing techniques to lift them to the surface. So now we're conscious. We then explore that to basically do a full body scan to see how we're feeling, awareness. And then the integration element takes place by using the breath to essentially transmute that belief system, that paradigm, whatever it may be, and then anchor it deep within the body. So we are essentially massaging the parasympathetic nervous system. So now we're feeling, like that warm hug. We're feeling that state of secure and then solidarity. We're feeling nurtured. And that's what it ultimately comes down to. So when you feel an insecurity about something, doesn't matter what it is, it's because you are lacking a space where you feel nurtured. It's all about using breath to create the space. That's how you integrate the conscious and awareness together to create that singularity, which is essentially solitude, peace. In Sanskrit, we call it samadhi, or shant, peace, shanti. That's how you navigate that state.
Okay. So once you've done that, so like you say you're a procrastinator, that's the issue, and you procrastinate a lot because you set the bar too high too many times, and you've just not lived up to it for your own sake, because you say, I'm going to do this incredible thing because you're already motivated, you feel inspired one day, I'm going to do this business or whatever it is, I'm going to do this cut for this many days, I'm going to train on this challenge for like 30 days or whatever it is, and then you just don't do it. So you procrastinate your out things because you're like, I'm probably not going to even do it. And you've become conscious of them. You've become aware of how they make you feel, that visceral feeling in the body, and then you're using your breath to integrate them and to transmute them into something more. Would you even say it's positive, or would you just say it's neutral?
So in order to essentially change and shift your paradigm, you need to actually create a neutral charge, right? And so let's just use procrastination as an example. There's 2 ways that this can affect people. Some people, and this is based on your own personal constitution, some people are naturally in a state of lethargy. So what we need to do is, they'll be aware of, they're procrastinating and they're aware of their habits, because everybody is. But what we need to do is essentially spin that energy up from that very low, sluggish, low vibration into a neutral vibration, or perhaps even raise it higher to then bring it down. using your breath. Conversely, you could also have somebody who is quite hyper, like almost someone who exhibits like ADHD, or there are people who I work with who have ADHD, and they're constantly up, they're constantly ticking and thinking of a plethora of things, and then they never get it done because their thoughts don't allow them to actually complete their actions or their tasks. We need to then catch that moment, bring it down to neutralize it, and perhaps even go a little bit further depending on how severe their state of lethargy or, just very high activation is. And then we use the breath essentially to create this pendulum and a seesaw to bring it back up to neutral, to create what I call the singularity. I do a lot of this in the meditations that I do. And in the singularity, you're creating space to now bring focus to essentially whatever's going to move the needle for the individual. Therefore, you're able to neither like beat or destroy, but you're simply coexisting with procrastination, because it's just a state of being. That's all it is, right? These labels that we assign so much importance to are just sort of like fragments of one present state of being, right? And so when we can work with that, we can harmonize, synergize it, it actually doesn't affect us anymore.
Sure, yeah. That's really interesting that you can have both sides of it. Yeah, you can have that apathetic side of it, like, oh, why do I even bother? Or you can have that side of it, like, oh, I'm going to do everything all at once.
Yeah.
And I can observe both of those actually in myself. I've had time.
No, same here.
Like, too many ideas, I'm like, well, I can deal with that shit for sure.
Pretty much.
But at the same time, I can't even put up a fucking chin-up bar outside of my house. But then when I did it, and finally I'm like, oh, because there were so many things in my life at that point I was doing, going back to the chin-up bar experience, that I just felt like I couldn't get going with. And I think in a sense it was kind of like I saw it as a sign to just like, okay, do you know what? I don't need to do anything right now. I just need to be present with my family and raise my baby daughter and give her all the attention that I have. But then there's me wanting to like do all the things that I normally would do. I work out and build projects and programs and things like that. Yeah. So it's interesting as well that you have that pendulum and you often need to take something past the center point to bring it back. So if you're like -7, like in the apathy, you need to kind of go past 0, that neutral point, up to like +5, +6, so you can then bring it back down. I think that's the case with so many things. Like if you're a very agreeable person, for an example, it's just one example, for you to find natural balance and the right level of agreeable / disagreeableness, you kind of have to go the other way too far and become this really disagreeable person, which most people might see as not nice.
Yeah.
But then to bring it back down to the level of going, okay, I'm actually just having healthy boundaries, but still being pleasant and nice to people and helping people when they actually need help. And it's not an inconvenience to me, and I can actually do that rather than just people pleasing the whole time. That's so interesting. I think that you found that this works too with this methodology. Yeah, I find that really interesting.
Yeah, well, you see, it's just one modality, right? I mean, I'll give you a prime example. It's like it's with everything in life, right? I quite aptly call this one practice that I use when I'm taking people through this meditation. I call it navigating entropy, by basically creating order and chaos using the breath. So we understand how we can take ourselves from a state of, serenity, just like routine, structure, discipline, order. And then we break out of that and we create a sense of chaos or, heightened awareness, activation, right? We start spinning that energy up. And from there, we're able to weave in between the two states of being and then create the singularity, create the space, which is what creates that not the negative, but the neutral charge. And I find that breath work is the one variable that every human being has control over, right? So if you're looking at, say, for example, let's just say, you're a people pleaser, okay? Naturally, you're a very agreeable person. When you go to work, someone asks you, oh, hey, man, would you mind, just like making everybody a cup of coffee? And you're like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then, it gets your lunch break, and then you go to like the staff canteen or whatever it is, and you're really looking forward to like this type of sandwich. And somebody else says, oh, hey, listen, do you mind if I have that? I haven't eaten all day. Even though you're on the same boat, but you're just like, okay, sure, whatever. And you can see how this creates the stack of, oh, you're a people pleaser, which can then, especially for, I think, a lot of men, can actually feed into this narrative of you're weak, you're this, you're that, insert like negative belief system. You don't have control over the variables on things such as, well, if you were to say no to somebody, how are they going to react? Or, you don't have control over the variable of, for example, is there enough coffee to go around, right? When you're making drinks for everybody else, you don't have enough control over those variables. But what you do have control over is whether you enter a state of fight, flight, or navigate the lands between using breath. And so that's one, I think one key element that I like to really focus on, because everybody has control of, right?
Well, so I think it's an interesting one with using the breath sort of in those live situations. When I started meditating, I thought I was doing more like kind of spiritual alignment meditation, so like chakra oriented ones, things like that. And then I got into mindfulness meditation. And when I first started, I thought that the reason to meditate was to meditate. Like, I want to meditate so I can get good at meditating. But it's called practice, right? So when you go to tennis practice, you're going there to practice to play the actual game of tennis. If you go to football practice, you're practicing to actually play in a game. So when you practice meditation, you are practicing to apply what you are learning, what you are experiencing in the meditation, in the real game of life. I didn't understand that, but I learned that later, especially mindfulness meditation, that the reason you do a mindfulness meditation isn't just to meditate in that moment, not to just be mindful in that moment, so you can take what you've practiced there, what you've learned there, and then you can remain in that state throughout the rest of your days and life if you get good enough at it, right?
Precisely.
So the breath, even in meditation, is called an anchor. So you anchor your consciousness to it and you come back to it, right? So in breathwork, I imagine that if you were to use it in one of these sessions repeatedly, that when you're in one of these live situations where things happen within the, like, half a second, right? Someone just, you're walking in the canteen and, oh, I've been waiting for that sandwich all day, and the guy behind you is like, oh, do you know what? I really want that sandwich, man. Do you mind if I just have it?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. It's like, no, okay. And then your normal instant reaction would be just, yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it. But like, how does the breath work in that situation? You take a quick breath and then you can kind of anchor yourself back in that state and go, do you know what? I've had a bit of a shit day, and I'm going to have that sandwich. I'm first in the queue. I hope you understand next time if you get it before me, you can have the sandwich. Having that weaving in between of being, instead of not just being like, nah, mate, I'm having it. Or just like being rude or horrible, but just having that assertiveness, right? And can you use the breath in that way in those live situations where things happen that quickly?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So This is the beauty of this is the beauty of breathwork. It can be used in literally any situation. So back when I was in the military, when we were taught about our skill at arms practice, one of the first principles that we were taught is actually how to use our breath to still our mind. So, for example, you're looking downrange, for example, you're looking over your sights, you're now acquiring a target. You are scanning your environment, right, for, potentially additional threats, or you're just assessing the situation before you're acquiring and you're picking up your sights and aligning it with your target. We're using breath to bring attention to the front post. So imagine let's use this as the analogy. So whatever it is you're trying to bring attention to, whatever the situation is, you are now setting your sights on that target to align. Now, you're in this state, you have identified, okay, this is the situation. But now you've got the muzzle climb, right? The muzzle climb and dip. And this is what I call entropy, right? This is the disturbance. This is the disturbance to the current situation. For example, that guy says, hey, can I have that sandwich? Or, you come home after a long day and your partner's like, oh, you forgot to take the bins out. Or like, did you get that thing that I asked you to get? And you're just like in that moment, right? That is the flash, right? That's literally the flash. And you're literally feeling like the energy, the vortex spinning up within your chest. In that moment, okay, what we were taught is you take a nice inhale through the nose, fill the lungs, okay, because now what's happening is we're massaging this area, we're creating space, we're expanding the lungs, we're expanding the thoracic region, okay, and now you've got this nice, big, elevated climb. You hold that space for a split second, and slowly exhaling through the nose, and you come to a nice, flat line. Right, you've now established a baseline where all conscious thought becomes a lot easier to process. It becomes easier to select your words. It becomes easier to take action. So that is the most important aspect when it comes to navigating the chaotic cycle of psychic entropy. Right, all the Danco followers will know exactly what I'm talking about here. So you are in this space. And now you've created this expansive sphere, and you've let it collapse and deflate, and it's come back to baseline. Now there's no wiggle room, right? We're not going, we're not raising, we're not dipping. We're just simply at baseline. Then it's easier to pick your words and say, hey, you know what, man? I really had a bad day. I'm really hungry. I've been looking forward to this meal like the entire day. No offense. Hope you don't take any offense, but I'm also first in queue. So when you're next in queue, and if you get here before me, all yours. Or, yeah, babe, you know what? I didn't take the bins out. Sorry about that. I just kind of walked in. Been a really busy day. I'll do it now, or I'll do it after dinner, if that's okay. Or, oh yeah, I clean slipped my mind, had a really busy day. I've been really hungry, just, not in the right headspace, but I'll go get it first thing tomorrow, or I'll go out and get it now, right? It's so much easier to then essentially create that action. And in our case, in the military, squeeze the trigger and engage our target with complete focus and complete stillness, which then navigates both aspects of the cycle of entropy, order, chaos.
Yeah. I think it's such an interesting example, because that kind of agreeable, disagreeable experience or scenario that people find themselves in are often very unconscious and very kind of in the moment, because you're not really thinking. I mean, you said you explained a good kind of checking out the range, which is kind of being conscious, right? Like, before you're walking in your house and you're just thinking, just your mind's just doing the normal thing that, like, psychic entropy, it's just got got a million thoughts going around, and you walk in the house and they're like, why haven't you done the bins? And something like that, why haven't you taken the bins out? And then instantly you just jump on there, oh yeah, sorry, I'll do it now, kind of thing. And it's just an unconscious thing that just happens instantly. And in those moments with communication with other people, it happens in a split second. So to be able to change that is very difficult compared to, say, just procrastinating around a project that you want to do. Because when you're working on a project, it doesn't happen in a split second. It's not like having a conversation. We have to respond within that time. I think we do have more time than we give ourselves a lot of time in conversation. We can take that breath, like you're saying. But in these other moments where you're thinking, you've noticed, we haven't talked about this yet, but like destructive or detrimental habits, where you've noticed a feeling like you want to do something that you don't want to do. You've already said to yourself, you don't want to do it. You're not going to do it anymore. And then you've got this emotion coming up, or this urge coming up, or the thought of, oh, I should do that. But even noticing you have that thought often isn't the case. There's just this kind of mental hijacking that happens.
Yeah.
And you have this mental blank spot. You don't even see it coming, and the action just takes care of itself. And there's lots of scenarios, I guess, you can play this out, and some have a shorter time span between the amount of time you have to actually react to the stimuli. Like there's a trigger, stimulus in the environment, and then your reaction. And I guess what you're talking about extends that gap between you and the stimulus. So you have this, and you can be like, right, do you know what? I'm going to respond now in a way that I have chosen to respond.
Correct.
As practiced in responding, because without practice, it's going to be hard, and you're going to get it probably wrong. I'm pretty sure there's been times like that. Me, when I was younger, more of a people pleaser or more of an agreeable person, and there's been times where I've just been rude to people, just told people to fuck off or something like that. Because I'm like, what's that point where I don't want to be this agreeable person anymore, but I haven't figured out my level of assertiveness yet.
That's it.
So
Yeah.
I'm just, no, fuck off. And I'm like, do you know what? That was liberating saying that, but also that's not the best way to act in that situation. Yeah?
But not the best for maintaining relationships.
Yeah, for sure. But like we said, you kind of have to swing in the opposite direction first to come back to center. Yeah, it's really interesting that there's all these different scenarios where it can play out in this way. And like I said, like the detrimental habits one is a really interesting example of that too. So how would that, does the conscious integrating awareness come into that sort of stuff? If someone has an addiction or like compulsive tendencies towards a certain behavior, how does that help?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, so CIA can be applied to literally, it's designed for life, every aspect and facet of life. And I would even, dare I even say, it's especially when it comes to addiction management or, combating destructive behaviors. Because again, you're using the same principle of, okay, I'm bringing consciousness to what my mind is telling me. I'm now becoming aware of how this makes me feel. Now I understand. I know the lay of the land. Okay, I can see all the formations. I can see what's happening. I'm now in a state where I can make a calculated decision. I can make an educated and informed decision. And at first it will be really hard, because especially if you've been living your life on autopilot, your natural sort of like brain, like motor neuron ability will just go into this straight on, autopilot knee-jerk reaction. But the more that you practice with understanding your breath, understanding how your breath affects your body, essentially, imagine the thought comes into mind. It's now creating this circuit. It's now creating all this energy that's now basically passing through the various checkpoints that are activating your impulse. Breath allows you to short circuit that feedback loop, and
Sure.
allows you to create space to be like, you know what? I won't go and binge watch like Netflix when I should be doing this project. Or you know what? I said I was going to get up at 5. It's now like 9:45. Maybe it's a good idea to get into bed as opposed to streaming or watching movies or just eating junk food. Like, oh yeah, I've got 3 more days left of this cut. Let's put down the bag of chips. Let's just do something that's more aligned with my goals. So that way I'm actually an accomplished human being, right? So that's how it feeds into this. And I use this exact same technique to cope with my own addictions, because I also can. I have proved to myself that I have an addictive personality. I guess my previous states of being was I was a very addictive, very, 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 very addicted to just lots of cheap dopamine. So video games, fast food, just quick like scrolling, etc. I could literally 3 years ago I could spend, like, no word of a lie, like close to 7 hours just scrolling on my phone. We're not even talking about touching video games. I used to, quite literally, I remember I would go to work, come back, and I would be so like on edge. I could almost feel like borderline anticipation anxiety, because I'd be like, right, I'm going to go home. I'm going to go upstairs. I'm going to put my bag down. I'm going to go like warm up whatever food's in the fridge, bring it upstairs, switch on my PC and start playing GTA or start playing Red Dead or just playing a video game. And then that would be me lost completely to the ether, just lost in the void until like 2 a.m. to then go to sleep and then wake up to go to work again. And then, thank God, I woke up one day, I was like, this is probably not very healthy. I mean, big panda eyes, looks like I hadn't slept in like a week. Just brain was completely fogged. Thankfully, my mother's also in the well-being space. She helped me understand and align myself. And as I started to discover more and more about the breath, I started to practice it. And I realized I'm actually creating space here. And it's actually activation of the pineal gland as well, right? So that pineal gland really, for all the people who are like Joe Dispenza fans or just into like hardcore, like, cell, chakra, DNA activation, all that stuff, the pineal gland plays a vital part in unlocking different elements of your psyche and essentially showing you who you really are. Because when you know who you are in the current state of being, you're able to navigate that space to then essentially create the next state that you will be. So we're talking about present and future self, right? And so when it comes to combating addictions, yes, you 100% can use conscious integrated awareness to essentially just break out of that box and start living the life that you want.
Yeah, so you can use it to analyze. So in a practice, like in the actual time when you're practicing it, rather than kind of in the live game, you're using it to analyze the patterns that are there, the kind of emotions that are there, what kind of stories you're telling yourself, what kind of beliefs you have about yourself and about other people, about the world. Yeah, and then using the breath to align those things. It's really interesting. I think it's really such an important skill to be able to have, that self-awareness, self-consciousness. If like, the famous quote, an unexamined life is not worth living. Like not being able to have the awareness even to examine your own self, examine the texture and the corners of your own mind. Yeah, it's such an important skill. And I think people, like I did, when they start meditating, they just kind of want to do it for the reason of meditating. They think, I'm going to become more, less anxious, more relaxed, more chilled out or whatever, or maybe they're doing try and raise the vibration or something like that, or activate the pineal gland. I think the number one thing that you would want to do meditation for is the practice of becoming self-aware. Having that mindful mind so you can actually notice your own states when they arise. And
That's it.
at the same time, when those do arise, like you want to go and eat some chips, like you're saying, or whatever, you want to eat a chocolate bar, and you have this urge, and you noticed it. You're like, oh, do you know what? I never noticed it. Usually I'm like way past it. Like the next day, I'm like, that chocolate bar. Yeah, I'm noticing that I want to do it before I even go and eat it. And then, like, shit, what do I do with it? And then it can get very uncomfortable. And if you're more heavily addicted to something, it can be very, very uncomfortable. Feel the emotions that are there that are actually guiding those impulses and those compulsions. Yeah, it's actually insane, actually, what kind of symptoms people can arise with that, say, just have process addictions, not necessarily actual, they're not addicted to a physical substance, the process addiction, like eating or pornography or something like that. And when they are in recovery, the symptoms of recovery that can come up, they range vastly, and they can feel like physical symptoms, like as you have physical pain. Like get pain in your body, and you can just feel torn completely. But what you're talking about also is giving people the tools to deal with that state, not just be aware of it, but to actually deal with it, process it, transcend it. And I love that you said, use the word alignment, and you talk about like your mother helped you bring you into alignment, and the word integration as well that you obviously use in the CIA term. I think they are on top of self-awareness. If you can like be self-aware, and then it's about integration, it's about alignment. There's obviously the theory of internal family systems, so internal family systems is basically this guy that was working with families. He came up with this, and he was working with families in real life. He was a therapist, and it was called like family systems therapy. And he figured out that people had these different parts of the family, and they play different roles and things. If you got them all together and to talk to one another in a safe environment, and did so with the right amount of kind of jurisdiction and helping them to guide them through the conversation, they could figure out why they were trying to, say, protect one another, but they're protecting each other in a very dysfunctional way. Like, I don't want to do this. My dad keeps telling me that I can't do this, blah, blah, blah. And the dad's like, well, I'm just trying to protect you. It's like, no, you're being horrible. It's like, okay, well, you've all got your motivations here. And what we just need to figure out is which of these are positive, which of these are actually healthy, which of these are coming from fears that aren't necessarily valid, maybe they're from your own childhood, blah, blah, blah. And then this guy started working with, I think it was people with eating disorders. And he started to realize that these people had these internal parts inside themselves that all had their own desires. They all had their own fears. And they were like sub-personalities. And you don't have to be, you don't have to have multiple personality disorder. Everyone has this. Everyone has the different parts of themselves that have these different desires, fears, stories that they tell themselves, and they motivate you and compel you to do certain things in certain situations or whatever. And when you're talking about alignment and integration, Carl Jung, his meta view of the process of personal growth was called individuation. So it's about becoming an individual, becoming indivisible. You become one thing that cannot be divided. And I think really that's the key to self-actualization as well. It's about bringing all those different parts of yourself, all those different motivating forces, and putting them into alignment. And what you're talking about is, I think, a great methodology of doing that and getting to know those different parts. And it can take a long time to really get down to it, though. It can happen in stages, right? Where there's this certain problem that's just kind of wreaking havoc throughout your life. And you want to fix it, so you go to someone for help, and they help you to deal with that thing. And you're like, wow, I felt like a different person. I've transformed and changed. And then you realize there's this other thing. And then you go past that, and you realize there's this other thing. And there's these levels, like an onion, might be peeling off the levels to get to the core, but slowly you're integrating yourself, and you're becoming more individuated. So I love those terms. I use that as bringing yourself into alignment and integrating yourself. What you talk about there as well, about the pineal gland. Well, there's a lot to talk about here because
there's loads, man.
loads of back. I want to share a quick story about with you actually about this experience I had. So back in 2018, I was in Portugal, right, and I was having a massive spiritual enlightenment phase when I was there. I was very money motivated when I was younger, and in 2016-17, my parents sold the house in the UK, and I was, how long ago was that? So 8 years ago, so I was about 24, and they were moving to Portugal, and they were going to buy a house that needed renovating, and that's what I used to do. I used to do building restoration and renovation, so they asked me to come out there with them and help them renovate the house for however long. Ended up staying out there for 10 months. And when I was out there, I was like, right, I'm going to work on their house for them. I'm going to work on my YouTube business. I was starting YouTube back then. And I was committed to make my YouTube business work completely. So I didn't have to charge my parents anything to work on the house. I'm going to go out there, work for my parents for free, because that's something I want to do. I want to be of service to my parents, be a good son kind of thing, and just help them out, but also work on my YouTube business. And I was committed in my mind. I was like, this is going to work no matter what. Got out there, the YouTube business didn't take off straight away, and I needed money. So I'm actually asking my parents to pay me. Before I went out, I said to myself, I'm very money motivated. The reason I do most of my work most of the time is because I want to make more money. So I wanted money because I wanted freedom. When I was going to Portugal, I realized that, if I'm not really charging my parents for money, then I need motivation from elsewhere. What's going to keep me going? I thought it would be a great period for me to start working on my spirituality, like get really focused on my own spiritual growth. And for a few months when I was there, I wasn't really focused on it. It wasn't something that was like in the forefront of my mind a lot of the time. It was just kind of there, but I had set the intention previously. I was meditating quite a lot and things like that, and listening to spiritual guidance and things like that. But one day, after being there for about 5 months or so, I was taking a drive with my partner. We were going to the local town because we lived in this really small village, and we thought we'd take the scenic route. So I borrowed my dad's truck. He had like an old Ford Ranger pickup truck, and one of the builders that I'd met there, he said, if you take that road out of the village, it will take you the long way around to this other town where the supermarket is, and it's a really nice drive. So I was, all right, we'll just drive that way. Started driving that way. Took loads of detours. Like we drove down this like rocky bank into the forest, and like drove along this riverbed and back out, and it was really fun and stuff. But we were driving for ages, and then we got back to the main road. We got to this crossroads, and I didn't really recognize any of the names that were on the signposts. I was like, we're lost. We have to. Anyway, whoops. I kind of recognized one of them, and it was nowhere near. I knew it was nowhere near where we were trying to go. So I was like, okay, we're just lost. But I knew it was like, to get to where we want to go, it's right. So we took this right turn, and we're going through this wood, like these just woods. It was like a eucalyptus forest. It was just this dirt track in the middle of nowhere. And we got to this junction, and then one of the paths had these blue posts either side of the path. One of them didn't. And I was like, well, someone's obviously put those there. It must mean something. It must mean it goes somewhere. So we'll follow those. We followed that track, and then there was another junction. Same thing. Followed them again, and this happened like 8 times or something like that. And we then came out to another junction, and there was a little sign there. And the sign said, and it had an arrow, it said Upper Himalayas. And I was like, what the fuck?
Well, the Himalayas in Portugal?
What the Upper Himalayas doing here in Portugal?
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I had to figure out. I had to like have a look. So I drove up to the top of the hill, and there was this guy there sat there in the golf caddy. And I was like, right, we're trying to get to this place. We're lost, definitely. And what the hell is this place that we've just found? Like, where are we? And he said, this is a spiritual sanctuary for a communist kind of community, a small community where they'll work for free and help each other out. But it was a sanctuary for Sri Muji Baba. I'm not sure if I did Muji. He's got lots of stuff on YouTube. So M-O-O-R. Muji. He's a Jamaican British dude. Now lives in Portugal, and he's like he's a guru. So he's multicultural. Anyway, never heard of this guy anywhere in my life. And the guy at the top of the hill gave me Chinese little slip of paper. It just said Muji on it, and I had no idea what that meant at that time. Ended up that night going back, going on YouTube, typing in Muji, found this meditation that he brought out called the Invitation to Freedom. And that was one of the best meditations I've ever listened to for guiding you into the space of your awareness and having an empty mind in the most simple fashion that I've ever listened to. So that was one of the first kind of things that happened on this spiritual awakening / enlightenment path. He also told me that the guy that I met at the top of the hill, he said, in 2 weeks' time, they're having an open satsang where people can come from all over the world to the community and sit down and listen to Muji and ask him questions and things like that. And they hardly ever do this. But they're doing one every 2 weeks for the next 2 months. At that period that I randomly turned up there, not lost. And so I ended up going there, and I also did stayed there overnight, slept in the back of my van, and just spent some time there. And that was the most spiritually enlightening experience I've ever had.
Amazing.
For me, having that, my intention was set before I even went to Portugal. This was going to be spiritual. That's what I'm going to make it about. Right. And then I went there. I was following my joy, my bliss. I'm just going on a detour. I've got to run some errand. I've got to run an errand. Got to the supermarket, do some shopping. But I'm going to take the scenic route. I got lost. But I wasn't lost. No way was lost. My life is completely different now because of that day. There's no chance. On the last day of it, before I came home, and the whole free event thing was finishing, there was a massive thunderstorm, and driving home, I stopped and walked out to the middle of this field. It's this beautiful kind of valley with a river flowing through it, and it was tipping down with rain. And I just walked out. I just had this feeling that I just wanted to be out there in the middle of it, just stand there in the rain. But it was like a lightning storm at the same time, and I was like, shit, I could get struck by lightning. I had this feeling that I'd never felt before, that if I got struck by lightning and I was to die in that field, I was completely okay with it. There was no sense of fear of my own mortality. I was completely accepting. I was just at peace. And I think I don't really know a better definition of enlightenment than that. And that was kind of the peak of that experience. And then a few weeks later, I did this. I just want to round off this story while I was in Portugal. It was one big kind of spiritual experience. A few weeks later, I was working on my YouTube channel more. I was kind of like, I'm going back into it now. I'm just going to commit fully. And I was doing this interesting dimension jumping, because I was really into more spiritual stuff back then. So you take 2 glasses, and on one of them, you write what your current situation is. For me, it was I wrote 0 views or no views on my YouTube channel, and the other one, I wrote millions of views. Right. And stuck no views on one glass, millions of views on the other. and then you fill the current situation, glass up with water, and you contemplate your life being full of that reality. So, yeah, my life is full of no views. That is my life, right? That's my reality. That's how full I am. And then you pour the water into the other glass, and you contemplate your life being full of that reality. Oh, now I've transferred into this new reality where my life is now full of millions of views. Like I filled that version of reality up. And then you drink the water. And the weird thing is, when I drank the water, I had this really strong pressure right here on my third eye. And I've been doing some meditations, like where you bring your attention to different chakras and put your fingers here. So I knew what it felt like. If you practice that a few times, you know that if you put all your focus onto your third eye here, you can feel the pressure there. It actually feels like something's there, or there's a pressure there. But at this point, there was no conscious attention to do that. I just drank the water, and it was like stronger than that. It was like someone was pointing their finger on my forehead like this so hard. And I was like, whoa, this is tricky, man. That was 18, so
awesome, man.
6 and a bit years ago. And since then, I mean, this channel's got like 150 million views on. So, yeah, I just wanted to lay that out because you touch on the pineal gland and,
awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for sharing, man. I mean, that's a crazy story, but well, at the same time, it's not, because you see how before you even went on the trip, you had already affirmed in your mind and said to yourself you're going to embark on a spiritual journey, and then you literally just called. You quite literally projected it, and then the frequency pulled you into the singularity, the moments of, well, states of being, rather, because you were in that moment, then in that moment, then in that moment, and now you have achieved that goal of spirituality. I do have to ask, though, did you manage to get the shopping done?
I can't remember that part. Probably. But my van, I don't know if it was that day that my van broke down, because my van broke down a lot when it's like that. So,
okay.
Oh, great.
Yeah. But hey, man, that's a cool story, man. Thanks for sharing. I think a lot of people also have it all depends, right? It's all, I think it's also when your desire to change, your desire to experience that shift, and then the right moment, the opportune moment aligns. And so the lines are literally like this, parallel. Before they're crossing paths, but when they align and they're parallel, that's when you will have a moment that will come to you. And that's where, essentially you activated that pineal gland. That third eye started to open up. So to me, that's what it sounds like that story was, which is pretty awesome. I bet it feels really cool.
Yeah, these days, I'm very just uncertain on kind of labeling any of the experiences that I've had.
Yeah.
Like people could say, like, I would have believed at the time, like, oh, that's my third eye opening, or that's my pineal gland activating. But that, I'm just like, what is there actual evidence for that? I had an experience. What do I call it? I don't know what to call it. Like, I could say it's my third eye opening, but like, is that the reality? No one knows, really. And so I'm quite agnostic around a lot of these concepts now. I think they're real, but I don't know what to make of them. I think anyone that describes them with certainty is kind of kidding themselves, because you don't know. You don't know. Like, I guess people have like DMT experiences or ayahuasca retreats, or those sorts of things, and then they experience something maybe multiple times that is an objective reality to them. But yeah, man,
it's all about your paradigm.
Yeah, I think that, but there's been studies as well that have shown that people from different cultures have seen similar things. It is hallucinogenic experiences, which is also really interesting. So there's definitely some things that happen, and you can, like a religious experience or spiritual experience like this can be brought about in a lot of people in a similar way using these things. So it doesn't make much difference in culture, which is really fascinating. I feel like I kind of hijacked the podcast then. We're having a conversation.
No, not at all, man. This is
But it's something. There was a guy actually at the retreat when I was there, and he just came up to me and he's like, "Oh, dude, I haven't seen you before. Like, who are you?" I was like, "Oh yeah, I was just like lost and found this place, and now I'm here." And he's like, "Oh, I didn't think you were lost." And I was like, "Yeah, you're probably right." Yeah, that's very suspicious. It's very auspicious. I love that word now, but I was like, what is auspicious?
auspicious.
It's characteristic of success. It's like, oh man, you get me going.
Yes, well, you were after that, weren't you? Before you even got on the plane to fly to Portugal, you were in the pursuit of success and spiritual, finding spiritual enlightenment. So that's what I mean when I say, you can use terms like pineal gland, third eye, whatever. They're just labels to sort of confirm to this very human brain of ours and understand it and interpret it. But if we can also just, again, bring our focus and attention back to the concept of, well, it just is.
Sure.
Right?
I think that's important. And I had to go where I was, I learned, this is the pineal gland. This is what it does. And believed it for a while. Had to have the experience of it for me to come out the other side and go, well, I don't know actually what that was. I'm completely comfortable with whatever terminology people use. Personally, I'm actually kind of envious of people that can be that certain on things a lot of time, because I'm this person who's so open to different ideas and different perspectives that I find it hard to get complete clarity on it. I'm like, what's the right thing? I want to talk to you about your journey, your experience. This podcast, it's called the Finance Growth Podcast. It's about rebirth. It's about transformation. It's about the old degenerative things that are no longer serving you, dying off, and then new life being born. That's similar with the phoenix, right? The phoenix gets old and it degenerates and it's not serving its own purpose anymore, and then it dies and it gets reborn and comes back into a new life. So what's your experience with your journey and your personal transformation? Take it how whichever way you want.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. So let's sort of start where things were sort of, the scales were tipping, right? So we have to go back to 2019, going into 2020. So I was coming to the end of an 8-year career in the army. Served in the army as a medic, as a combat medical technician. Working quite heavily within the clinical setting. So I was based at a GP out in Salisbury, and my situation was very unique. So for a start, I was one man in an entire block of flats on camp, which may sound like bliss, if you think of uni dorms, etc. Except that it was a very quiet camp, and the rooms were very small, like cubicle size, right? And my state of being at the time was, I was still very stuck in what I call boy psychology. So there's a book that I've been reading right now called King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. And it basically it essentially breaks down the different archetypes of masculine psychology. So you've got boy and man psychology. So I was still stuck in that very like boyish side. Would be heavily invested in playing video games. Didn't really, I've never really had any health issues, thankfully, but I wasn't really taking that great care of myself. Never got to the point where I was overweight or that it became a hallmark to be worried about, but I definitely didn't feel fit, right? And also the quality of food I was eating wasn't that great. The quality of food that was available there wasn't that great either. And so my mental state started to shift and align with that. And so, I found it was very easily susceptible to negative thoughts. Even people were having conversations in the workplace. I found that I was just absorb negativity. So as a means to sort of deal with that, the moment I'd get back, into my room from work, I'd immediately just play video games. I had my PC there, and I just play the day away, right? If I wasn't doing that, I was watching Netflix. If I wasn't doing that, I'm more than happy to be open about it. I was watching porn, anything to just escape. I was very much stuck in a state of escapism. Until then, I decided to leave the army, and I basically jumped feet first into the pandemic, which, as you can imagine, wasn't great for anyone's mental health. But I had already left it and already kind of like, passing the threshold of a spiral. And so the habits just began to compound. Even though I was now working within, frontline medical services, and just the nature of that work, you need to be a very switched on individual. Now, on paper, I knew what I was doing. I could operate as a clinician, but the mental toll and the taxation weighed very heavily. Basically, it was just more of the same negativity, same negative cycles. It got to the point where I eventually left the services there. I was in a probably what I call like the void, the dark phase that I think every human being goes through at a certain point in their life. And my dark phase lasted for about a year and a half, just shy of 2 years. What happened is I was just out of, not working. It's quite funny. I got heavily invested into GTA 5 role-playing games. So there's like a server called 5M where you essentially create characters that live out their lives, like a kind of like The Sims, but you're in control of it. You take on the roles of like the non-playable characters. So shopkeepers, people part of like, the characters that the main character normally would be just interacting with on a surface level, but now you're giving these people backstories, and you can interact with an entire server full of people. And oddly enough, this is how I knew that I was descending. Well, I didn't know back then, but now when I look back at it, I know that I was descending into chaos, because I was trying to latch on to the paradigm that I knew, which was I was still looking for a sense of order and routine to essentially like confirm my identity to myself. So I had two characters. One,
you were like you're looking for order and structure in a society within the video game.
Yeah, within like a virtual reality, right?
Sure, yeah, okay.
And so, I created two characters, one being like a police officer, one being a medic, funny enough, which was very representative of my roles, the jobs that I've done, the career path that I've chosen, and the way in which I was attaching a lot of meaning to that, because that was basically what my entire identity was, right? Outside of that, I didn't really know who I was. And so I'd be playing this game, I've got for like 8 p.m., because that's when the server started to liven up, until like 6 in the morning the following day. Mm-hmm. Sleep into the late afternoon, and basically rinse, repeat. And this is how I know that it affected me so much, because I'd actually wake up some days feeling like I'm going to be late for my shift, which is like literally sat here logging onto this fucking game. And then all the other dopaminergic habits that were heavy coping mechanisms were just manifesting and multiplying. And I don't like using labels. I don't really like to attach labels to things, but I would say during that phase, I was in a state of what we understand and call depression. Just had very low energy. my self-esteem was also pretty low because I was just attaching it to, I mean, like fictitious statistics, scores, leaderboards in games, for example. I was half-assing, I was working out, not really training, if that makes sense. And that also began to manifest in the types of relationships that I was attracting. So I had entered a long-distance like situationship with one with a girl, and that was a very like tumultuous, I think like year and a half of like not being able to see each other because of the pandemic, etc. And I was just a little bit of a mess, if I'm honest. But
Sure.
for me to sort of give you and the audience a better concept of that, it would be like excuse me, like the classic, you argue with the person you consider to be your significant other, and instead of speaking my truth, instead of speaking what was on my mind, I would swallow what came to mind and try and feed into the other person's ego, because I so desperately craved to be loved and accepted. This also manifested into the virtual world, where I actually became like an overachiever, because I would apply myself to whatever I was doing in the game and ascend through the hierarchy to the point where I was one of the more well-known people within the server. And so I started to attach meaning to that. So I was quite literally living the life that I wanted to live and becoming the person that, the higher self that I like to talk about, within a virtual reality. And in actuality, I was just a husk. And so, yeah, that's when, we fast forward to about a year and a half. From there, that's when I started to work on myself a lot more. I discovered self-improvement YouTubers. I got really deep into that rabbit hole, man. I was like fully into the whole, not the like the now the memes around like the Sigma male grind set type of content that we see. But yeah, I was like fully into it. I was just watching like fitness YouTubers. I was watching people talking about like masculinity, what sort of habits a man should have. That then also got a little bit dangerous, because then I kind of stepped into the Red Pill manosphere type of area. So you could see the pendulum quite literally swung one way, and I was just like, nope, like reject video games, just read all these self-improvement books, start studying like psychology, start studying like psychocybernetics, how to win friends and influence people. I was looking at all the self-help stuff. If it had self-help or self-development on it, I was all over it. I was consuming the hell out of it, to the point where my entire Instagram feed was nothing but Goggins motivation videos. It was like literally nothing but like, stay on and wake up, 4 a.m. runs, and who's going to carry the boats. And I mean, I still love that stuff, right? Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But that's one end of the spectrum, right? And now when I look at the work that I do, I help basically find people in both ends of that spectrum, kind of pull them into the center and teach them how to emulate that within their own psyche. But before I got to that point myself, I was on this other end of the spectrum where it was, women need to qualify for you, and, you need to just be on your purpose and on your grind and stack your money and blah, 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 all that stereotypical, like, alpha male bro code nonsense. And then it was through joining my mother within her business as a Reiki healer. So I'm a Reiki master, right? And I've been a Reiki master since I was 18. When I started to reconnect with this modality of work, I was healing other people, and in doing so, healing myself, healing areas of myself that had been very, very significantly damaged. In the Hindu philosophy, we call this seva, or service, right? being of service to other people allows you to actually, it's the ultimate way of being of service to yourself, because as a human being, we're social beings. And I think one of the greatest things that anyone can do, and when you look at business models in reality, when you look at a lot of what the entrepreneurs are doing, look at the people within Cortex, the services that they offer, never mind what the actual delivery system is, the crux of their business is to actually help people with certain pain points. You help alleviate pain by offering a service which gives them the desirable outcome, which then allows you to achieve yours in turn, right? And this is, again, where we start to feed into the duality. This is where we start to navigate entropy. This is where we start to look at, bridging order and chaos together. I started to do this through Reiki healing. I then started to study as a yoga instructor. And then I began to hold these classes. And as that took off, I started to learn more and more about myself. I started to actually understand why I had certain impulses. I understood, okay, when I am bored, I feel like playing a video game because now it's just numbing my mind. Now it's just giving me something to do within my peripheral vision. It's stimulating that, but it's only going to hold my attention for a set period of time because this is a construct that isn't natural and it doesn't actually really fulfill me. It just satiates this, it's, when you wake up in the middle of the night and you feel a little bit hungry, but it's like, you're not actually hungry. You just need to have another sip of water or go drink some water, maybe move around and then you can go back to bed.
Sure.
It was like that, but for my mind. And then I would gratify that itch, and then suddenly the thought of, oh, you know what, man, just watch some porn. You're still not stimulated enough. Why don't you just go and just flick on a video, right? Won't get graphic about that, but it's the train of thought. And so I'd go ahead and do all that, and then I'd be like, okay, well, I got that dopamine hit. Now what? I'd be left feeling unfulfilled. I'd actually feel worse off because I know this is not something that really satisfies me. Again, it's scratched the surface, but that itch is still going to be there until I rewired myself internally, because I had been conditioned to buy into very instant, gratuitous activities, and I was living a very instant, gratuitous life, right? Because one thing, especially in life in the military, is it's a very fast-paced life. Nothing is ever solidified. Nothing is ever concretized. You're just in a location. You're constantly moving to and fro. The relationships that you form, you may have long-standing friendships, but as people move from unit to unit, you're constantly uprooted, right? And if you're constantly uprooted, it means you're never grounded. And so I realized that what I needed to do was actually ground. And this is an exercise that all martial artists use. You will see this in yoga. You'll see this in breathwork, especially. Even in the more traditional, boxing exercises, kickboxing, things like that, right? So you'll see there's always some form of grounding exercise to really bring yourself into the present moment, right? To root yourself to the current state of existence. And the chakra that's responsible for this is the root chakra, right? Which is also our reproductive organs. So when that is out of whack, it's no wonder you can't feel grounded. No wonder you're all over the place, right? So I started to learn and delve into breath work and understand, okay, how does my breath actually work? Because 90% of people don't actually breathe properly. We're all stress breathers, so the shoulders are up here, and we're breathing very shallow. So I started to learn how to breathe unilaterally, right? Started to actually expand my lungs properly. Started learning how to use that breath to now guide my energy, around my body. And that's when I started to register all these different things kind of popping up, right? Like all these like red flags, essentially, right? It's like, okay, here's a marker, here's a marker, here's a marker, here's a marker. And I began to explore that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I started to uproot the negativity. I started to uproot the thoughts that were associated with those behaviors, because those were paradigms that I created for myself. And funnily enough, I will say this, one thing that I learned about myself was the mass consumption or the overconsumption of like video games, mindlessly scrolling social media, porn, right, in the form of an addiction or just overly consuming it. And all other elements of escapism comes from a deep, innate sense of low self-worth and just like an inferiority complex, right? Because when I look back over the narrative of my life, especially during my career in the armed forces, I was always trying to chase perfection. I was always trying to chase, recognition. I wanted to be the best. And because I wanted it so bad, I actually set myself up for falls. I would constantly self-sabotage. And so that's how these behaviors started to manifest in life after I left the military. And I had to revisit it. And yeah, as you said earlier, they can be very painful emotions to explore, right? It's very painful to... Yeah, I mean, it's painful enough when someone tells you, oh, you're a loser, or, you have a problem, and you now have to acknowledge that. Imagine how painful it is when you are the one that's giving yourself these answers. But that's what I mean. We are the only people that can give ourselves these answers, because the only way that you can progress and change your state is to know the self. And so using breath as the vessel to guide myself through the journey of navigating the energy belt, which is the chakras, but then it's also navigating the body, right? Because the body is the canvas. It is the landscape, right? I had to navigate that area and even explore, foreign territory or areas that I thought I knew, but they changed over time. And so I had to learn, how has this landscape changed? Then understand within myself how I wanted things to look within myself. Okay, so what kind of behaviors do I want to emulate? What kind of behaviors do I see, the higher self, the everyone's got this idea of like their perfect version of themselves, right? And so I started to look at these behaviors. I started to then write it all down. This is where journaling comes into play, because now you're transmuting mental energy into written format, and you can now look at the paper. So I started with everything that I believe was wrong with me. Then I looked at, okay, everything that I want to be. Then I looked at, okay, how can I create a correlation to change column A into column B? And that was the foundation. And then the breathwork started to solidify and anchor those beliefs, along with meditations and, people talk about affirmations, manifesting reality, etc. But I suppose in the more logical realm, in the logical sphere, it was we set a goal, we set a target. I then started to look at how I can consciously take action to emulate elements of the goal and the target. And then the mode of transport to bridging the two spaces was, for me, using breath to navigate that landscape, find and literally like almost do like surgery, right? You would like twisting or like fusion cores, right? You're just kind of like twisting the old one, it's all burnt out, extracting it, but like, okay, yeah, this needs to be replaced. But before we do that, we need to clean out the socket. Cool. Scrape out any gunk that's there, and then replace it with a fresh new fusion core. Right? That's a little gamification there.
Yeah, it's a great analogy, actually.
Right. And so fast forward, like 2 years and some change. I am now in a position where I genuinely, hand on heart, can say, how after going from someone who used to chronically play video games, not even think twice, wouldn't even think, to be fair, just click tab, porn, shitty food, lack of routine, in a very toxic situationship. If I was to, do like a compare contrast, now where I'm at is, I don't play video games like at all. I say at all. It's like I'm in more control of it if I ever decide to. In the last month, I actually genuinely haven't even touched it, even though I've thought, oh, you know what, it might be cool to try and beat this boss on Elden Ring or try and go and unlock this thing. But by the time I get through the door after my day's done, I'm too tired. I have a shower, I'll eat some food or whatever it is, and then I'm in bed because I'm out. I'm so much more busier. I have a consistent fitness routine. I've attracted a relationship with a woman who's quite literally just I'm still lost for words, right?
You're happy.
Yeah, I'm happy, right? And
good.
And just in general, the stuff I consume it's all done with me understanding that I'm in control. I have control of my actions. There's no impulse anymore. And if I do feel like an impulse, this is another thing. It's okay, sure, if you want to indulge in some fast food or you want to play a game, right? Even if you want, not that I'd advise it, but if you wanted to go and watch a video or something like that, it's make the decision from a place of being in control. And
yes.
And most importantly, listen to the breath that comes up when the thought comes to mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's like a shallow, stuttery breath, then that's fear, that's anxiety, and then it's no, we need to change that. We need to do more work to shift that breath. We need to shift that state of being. But if you can hand on heart, just say it as clear as day, as a matter of fact, then it shows that you're in control and that you no longer are controlled by impulse. You're now making conscious decisions, and you're quite literally just integrated conscious awareness. So you are a CIA agent, as I like to say to my students who do this. We're all CIA agents.
Awesome. Yeah. I wonder, you see, I hear kind of a lot of stories of people coming out of the military, and there's so much structure in the military that I guess is forced upon you. You're doing it willingly because you want to join the forces. For most people in the West, with other countries in the world, people might be listening to this where they have to, national service and things like that. But yeah, you want to do the training, you want to have that structure, you want to commit to it and whatnot. But then when you come out, some people, I think, find it hard because society outside the military is not so structured. It's way more chaotic. So they've got this kind of internal rigidity of the structure that they're trying to impress on the world, and it doesn't quite fit because everything's too chaotic. Yeah. But I wonder, is there also something the other way around where someone's been in the military for maybe a less amount of time, where they've had this structure imposed on them, but they haven't had really time to integrate it themselves. So when they come out of the military, they are craving that structure still, but there's no one there to build it around them for them. And they haven't really got the capacity to do it for themselves yet. What did you find the effects of that? Was that something that you think played into it, coming out of the military in that way and coming back into kind of civilian life?
Oh yeah, definitely. This is a kind of like a little bit of a peeve of mine, because I've just heard the story so many times. I've got loads of friends in the forces, British and US and just all over, right? Um, the thing that I always say is that the military is not a job; it is a way of life. A lot of people don't like. A lot of people outside of it see it as, oh, it's an occupation. No, it's not an occupation. It is a way of life. And so when you're in it for, I mean, yeah, like your minimum service period, which is I think 4 years, still here, unless they've changed it. That's enough time to instill this routine where, yes, you've got enforced discipline, but then you've got this square, right? It's just order. It's just nothing but order. You've got, your orders in the morning. You've got your first parade, got your working detail until lunchtime. You then go for your afternoon parade. You then do, like whatever admin until 5 p.m. And then it's you in your own time, go do PT, go do phys, go eat, go shop, go whatever, hang out with your mates. And then it's like, bang, 8 a.m. first detail, unless you're doing something else. When you come out of that into quite literally nothing, it's literally, hey, at the careers advisors will say, okay, we're going to help you write a CV so that you can secure employment outside of the military. Sure, fine, no problem, whatever. Which is nice that they do that for some of the people who've been absolute lifers and haven't really picked up like admin skills. But even then, it's just like, okay, well, thank you for your service. We've looked at your CV. Good luck with that. See ya. And you quite literally just drop. Like it's kind of like getting unplugged from the video game. You're in this world where everything is just like Groundhog Day. It's all the same stuff. Maybe, you might have been someone who deployed. You might have been someone who went on loads of exercises, loads of courses. You had this rank. You had a profile, right? You had a sense of purpose, whatever way it may have been. And then you're suddenly unplugged and you're just like, oh, okay, well, nobody cares that, you may have been a sergeant major of 22 years who did P Company, got his wings, did the commando course, did all this like cool shit, may have even served overseas. Because in the working world and like the civilian side of life, and if I'm honest, like this is reality, right? We're talking about reality. People only really care about how they can be served and how you can help them fulfill their objective, which one might argue, well, isn't that what the military is all about? I mean, yes, essentially you are just a service number. You are an element that serves a joint goal, but the way in which you operate is very, very different. And I also found it very frustrating when I was even working within the NHS and the private medical sector. How is it that there are some people who are managers who don't even turn up to work on time? How is it that there are people who are supposed to be in charge of, like very, very instrumental, elements to the business who don't even have their admin in order? I just found it bizarre. But, it's just like, yeah, and I'll be honest with you, man, like sometimes I still struggle. It's like one thing we're taught like through basic training is like manners. Everything's about manners and respect for others. It's in the core ethos, right? And when I see someone just being overtly rude just for the sake of it, it does kind of make me think like, who are you, right? But then I have to remind myself that those people don't know any different to whatever paradigm that they already exist in. Just the same as soldiers and military personnel exist in one other paradigm. So we all speak the same language, but when you're outside of that world, it's like, okay, you might be lucky if you come across another service person and then you connect. But when you're speaking with someone else who doesn't know anything about it, just like you're speaking a completely different language. So it can be very frustrating. Yeah, it can be very frustrating.
Sure, yeah. I imagine so. And yeah, I hear a lot of stories of people that struggle to kind of integrate back in society in that way. And I hear a lot of stories of just people with poor mental health inside the forces as well. And I think maybe that's part of having so much structure, so much purpose. And there's outside of that, it's way more ambiguous. Where is the structure? Where's kind of the and without having that there in place, it's like finding the purpose, finding the meaning. Where do I fit into things? And I think integrating yourself, for me, integration means like integrating your worldview, the narratives, and what are the stories that you tell yourself about the world or what you're here for? What is the big picture? What's the meta narrative of your life?
For me, sorry, what was the question?
And I was just going to say, and for me, like that's part of the Phoenix growth. It's about rebirth and sacrifice.
Yes,
the Phoenix, it goes through a death and a rebirth, so like a resurrection, right? Mm-hmm. And Jesus Christ was resurrected.
Yeah,
but what happened to Jesus before he was resurrected? He was sacrificed, and he had to sacrifice himself to the world in order to rise again, transcendent, higher in the higher state of being, consciousness. For me, that's one of my fundamental philosophies and life narratives that I now see the world through. That's what we're here to do. We're here to go through a series of rebirths, a series of reincarnations within this life that we live, and to transcend each time. And that's what a sacrifice is. A sacrifice, if you're making the right sacrifices, that means that you are giving up something of a lower nature to replace it with something as a higher nature.
I like that.
Every choice, every single choice you make is a sacrifice. So like you get home from work or you get home with your busy day and you go, right, I'm going to either could go on a video game 30 minutes or just maybe I'll start for 30 minutes and now I just get lost in the game and I'll be up to 2 a.m. Or I can read this book, meditate for 20 minutes, go to sleep. If you choose one or the other, you're sacrificing the other. If you choose to read and meditate, you sacrifice the experience and let go of the experience of playing the game.
Yeah.
If you choose to play the game, you sacrifice the other experience. So everything's a trade-off, but you're either making the right sacrifices or the wrong sacrifices. And the right sacrifices, in that religious sense, please God. Right? You're making the right sacrifice. Yeah. Things go better for you. You transcend. You move upwards. Things are become greater. They improve. If you're making improper sacrifices, then things get worse. So if you're making the right choices, basically that's what it is. Every choice is sacrifice. And to sacrifice yourself, like Christ did, is the biggest sacrifice you can make. So I'm sacrificing myself in the state I am right now, in a lower state, to replace it of something of a higher nature. That's one of the fundamental ethoses that now I see the world through. But it took me a long time to work that out. But figuring out that on my own was something that I found very important. So I think we've lost in a part that responsibility of thinking, I need to figure this out on my own. We pass off our own control and responsibility and the power we have over our own lives, often to authority figures, the doctor, or the politician, or your parents, or your boss, or your sergeant major, or your colonel, or whoever it is, and then say, oh, my life isn't going well because I'm not being guided in this way. Well, it's like, well, it's your life to live. It's your life to guide. You have to find the right mentors and find them out and figure them out. I'd like to finish on this, I think. When you were talking about, maybe not the most enlightening or positive place to finish it, when you were talking about you were playing the video game and you felt like you were living out your ideal life in the game, there was probably a part of you, right, that was getting its motivation, its desire satisfied, having that experience.
Oh yeah.
But there was obviously a part of you. So there's that one part that goes, I want to live this ordinary, successful life and have all these things and move my way up to the top of our hierarchy. But there was another part of you saying that you're not worthy enough, maybe, to do this in real life. So you're going to have to do it in the game.
And do you know what? I'll tell you actually. So I had a thought one day I was playing, very similar to what you said. My character had just got enough, made enough money through the job, and bought like a bright orange Buffalo, which in like the real world is like a Dodge Charger SRT. So it's like super like decked out, like really sick car, right? Yeah, I know, right? And I was like, like role playing, but like, yeah, man, like, yeah, I can't wait to like get in this baby and like take it for a spin and all that stuff. And then I had like, another player who was role playing as my character's girlfriend, who was like full on like, playing the whole like doting girlfriend, like, look, I'm so proud of my man and all this stuff. And I had this thought while we were like driving down the highway. And I thought, man, this is so cool. I wish I could have this in real life. And then, so a message was sent in the mind, and then something came back and said, well, you can. So why don't you? And that's when it didn't really register with me fully then. It was almost like this two-stage mechanism, which was, well, you can have all this. Why don't you? I just looked at myself. I almost had like almost like an out-of-body experience where I just saw myself like this, just, playing the game. And then I realized, like, well, I'm actually playing the wrong game. I'm playing here in this world that's been projected to me via a screen, but I should actually be playing in this world, in reality, because I do truly believe like life is like a video game. Maybe it is like, the gamer in me, but I find that also a lot of people, especially people with addictive personalities, tend to gamify a lot of life. And I've done that since I was a boy, since I was a child. And I was like, yeah, well, actually, yeah. I mean, if I just think about it, if I just kind of like work on my strength stat and, all that stuff enough by going to the gym, eventually I'll get a good body. I'll start to feel more confidence. This will work on the charisma skill. I see like the skill tree just going ding, 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 just increasing as I'm doing all this work. And I realized, well, the thing that's really holding me back is I was so adverse to hard work. And it wasn't even that the work itself was hard. It was, I kept telling myself in my mind that the work was hard. So my paradigm around like work and play was completely warped. Play was at the top of my priority list when it needed to be in tandem, because for me, work is play. Because when I work, I realize that I'm actually achieving the goal of, for example, money, networking, which leads to relationships, more money, which leads to more work, which means I can go out and buy the SRT10, one day. And everything else that's happening in this paradigm is what was being emulated to me from the screen, as opposed to doing the reverse, which is what so many people do, which is they get stuck in the virtual world, wish that they could have this in reality. Or maybe it doesn't even register. They just get stuck in the virtual world because it takes them away. It allows them to escape from reality. But I wanted to reverse that.
Sure. Maybe that part of them is just too strong or loud that says you're not good enough in reality to live that life. You're not worthy to live that life for whatever reason. I think I had a similar experience with the game. I used to play this really terrible Flash game called Stick RPG.
Oh yeah, the fighting game.
No, it wasn't a fighting game. So it was like a real life kind of RPG where you go around, you get a job. You could get a job at like a coffee shop, and then you have to just. But like time obviously was sped up. Like each day was 10 minutes, something like this. So you could go to the shop for like 2 minutes, and you get money, and then you could deal drugs and things on there as well. And, like
Jesus,
like you do all sorts of different stuff. Like
just like real life.
Yeah, but like every day is 10 minutes, so you can make progress real fast. And I think that's part of the issue. Like part of the thing is that people like playing games because they can make so much progress so quickly. It's like plays into instant gratification circuit that's in your mind. Oh, I can get to the top of this. I can complete this thing, finish it within a few hours or a few days. You actually do so well within such a short period of time. Well, real life time it takes a long time to do things. It takes a long time to get the body that you want. It takes a long time to build a good relationship. It takes a long time to build a business compared to in a video game. Inherently more meaningful when you get there, but you can't do it just in a week. For the most part, I think that's a big part of it for sure. This is a nicer thing to finish on now. You said, when you talk about that experience, you said, "Oh, I wish I could do this in real life." And then you had a voice within you said, "You can." Where do you think that voice came from? What was that voice?
I have a term called the higher self, which I honestly believe is also our inner child. The inner child, the higher self are connected because the inner child dreams, right? The inner child has dreams and aspirations of being, whatever you dreamt of being. Astronaut, rich billionaire, you want to be Tony Stark, you want to be Iron Man, whatever it is, you want to be Spider-Man, you want to be Batman, James Bond. Those are, all the archetypes that we aspire to become. And then the higher self knows how to get there. The higher self has already transcended that. It is like, almost like the mirror. It is the you that could be, and you are currently the you that is now. And then you have the choice of whether you pull the lever to go further or away from that individual. I truly believe, because that voice, it didn't come from here. It came from here. It was a feeling. It came straight from my chest when I just, consciously thought while I was driving. It was like nice sunset, everything, like literally something so scenic, right? And I was just got like this, my Discord pal who was just like, oh yeah, like wow,
So there was like a beauty element to it too.
Yes,
yeah,
yes, and that's why I thought, okay, this is not just like some random foy. I thought this is coming from within, and this was one of the first messages of, right, it's time to pull yourself out, unplug from this matrix, so you can learn to dominate this matrix.
That's so interesting. I think there's a positive spin on it too, because
it's possible, man. Anyone can do it.
Because I think you emulate, right? You imitate others. That's how we learn. That's the biggest way we learn.
Oh yes,
we're imitating. When you're a kid, that's all you do. You don't listen to what your parents say. You do what they do. Only 7% of communication is language. Something like 37% of that is tonality, and then like a huge chunk of it, like 60%, is corresponding language. It's just imitating. Yeah, we don't know how much of that is just little idiosyncrasies, little ways of doing things, or watching, or even bigger, more zoomed out narratives. Oh, my dad goes to work and then he comes home and then he reads me a story at night time. That's a story of the daytime. That's how it works. That's how like structure is. Or, for some people who's more dysfunctional, oh, my dad is here today. And then, oh, no, he's not. Oh, I haven't seen Dad in like 2 months. Oh, no, he's back. Oh, who's this guy? And then it carries this dysfunctional like narrative of reality.
Oh, and this has been normal. This is how you have a relationship.
Sure, yeah, and that's imitating too. No one has to say that to you. You just observe it. You just absorb it from the outside world. But playing a video game in that way, you're teaching yourself that, I can actually, it's kind of like the winner. If I can do this one thing, this game is basically based on real life. You have to get a job, you have to make money, you can get the stuff, you can get the shit you want. Do it in the game. Why can't I do it in real life? And then you take yourself out of that and go, do you know what? You can.
Yeah.
And then you can do it. It just takes a lot more commitment because it takes longer. Like, time is the one thing that we can't control. Right? We have, I say we have only two true currencies, time and attention. And that's why you spend time and pay attention. But you can't control the time aspect. But you can control the attention aspect. But it can take effort, can take work to actually get your attention unified, right, in alignment and integrated, because you have all these different parts playing in different directions and everything. Yeah. So which brings us full story.
Exactly.
Circle back to the beginning. Yes.
Circle. Exactly. That's literally what conscious integrated awareness is all about. Because, like you said, time and attention are two variables that we actually don't have control over. Attention a little bit more so, but it's not so much about, your attention is going to be spent regardless, right? So you actually don't have control over that, because even if I'm consciously thinking about not paying attention, I'm still paying attention to the idea of not paying attention. Therefore, that attention's being spent.
Sure.
Yeah. But what you can control is how we control the variable of where we choose to put that attention. How conscious we become of the quality of the attention. And the I guess the slicker you get with that skill, the quicker the time intervals between, the sort of lessons that are learned, and the quickness in which you can transcend your current self. Because that's what life is all about, really, if you think about it. We're all just trying to become better versions of ourselves, iterate, just like a business, right? Just continuously iterate until you have become someone that you can confidently stand solidly. You can stand with, firm, rooted, anchored, and without ego, without any form of apprehension, resentment, anxiety, whatever. You can just confidently just be, I am. So, I mean, exactly. Not I am me, the videographer. I am me, I am me. And it's like living.
And that's then that voice you have within you, the self, that higher self. You've actualized that virtue itself. Yeah. Which is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The top is self-actualization, and I like that more than, say, the phrase self-improvement, because self-improvement, it doesn't work. Self is just self. You cannot improve upon self.
Yeah.
You can change your personality, you can change your traits, your character. Yourself is just your true self is your true self. And which is, like you say, your inner child. So you're born, you come into this world as yourself, and you have all this shit going on around it, all the chaos. And you have to get rid of that, integrate it, align it, and then you become self, actually. You become again who you were meant to be. And there's a quote from Jung, actually, which says that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Which is exactly what you're talking about. It's like, it's iterating yourself forward, sacrificing yourself forward, growth, and then you become who you already are.
Yeah.
Pretty much everything and not that you've absorbed from the outside world. Which is really interesting. It's such a paradox, because you have to learn and you have to unlearn, but you have to learn first.
Yeah. That's quite literally what entropy is. It's order, chaos. These two discs that are just spinning continuously, sending out these ripples that are creating the landscape of our lives. And it's up to us to either continuously bounce between both of those polarities. So you'll constantly be in highs, lows, highs, lows, highs, lows. Yeah. Or where the self is right smack bang in the middle. And you're able to navigate that little landscape. You know, they call it the gray matter, the gray line. That's where you can see on both ends of the spectrum, okay, there we go. That's happening. Okay, that's happening. Okay. But you're so grounded that you just cut through all the noise. And that is where I truly believe that we self-actualize. And that's when, you know, they say, like, you enter the flow state, and everything in life comes to you, because you are just completely in that singularity, and the noise of life and the confines of life no longer apply to you.
Well, I feel like I've been in flow state during this conversation. It's been great, man. I feel like we could go all night.
Oh yeah, I love that too.
Yeah, let's prioritize our sleep and make the right sacrifice. The proper sacrifice. Yeah, absolutely. Let's definitely do it again another time. And where can people connect with you? Where can people find you on socials and find your services?
Yeah, sure. So I'm mainly active on YouTube and Instagram. So you can add me. You can look me up on YouTube, Sravan Allopi, and same, just first name, last name, all together on Instagram.
Cool. Awesome, man. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on. Really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.
Christo, appreciate it, bro.
Let's definitely do it again.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All the best, man.
Thanks, mate.